All characters and events in this publication, other than those clearly in the public domain, are fictitious, and any resemblance to real persons living or dead is purely coincidental. Copyright 2016 by R.L. Coy. R.L. Coy Books presents The Master of Names by R.L. Coy. A reading by Jeanette Coy. Chapter 4, Part 4. "Now," Tanaka began, "don't punch like a sissy. Put your arm out in front of you. Instead, turn your arm and take it behind you before stretching your arm out towards your opponent." The students did so, each standing in a queue and having a go at the punching bag. Plum enjoyed the feeling of the air between his fingers as he made contact with the soft leather punching bag. As they cycled through a few times, Tanaka then instructed, "Now, with the other arm." The students began the cycle again. "Now I want to show you a clever little trick called the knee uppercut. Lift your leg up. Kick your knees up to the sky. This is to make sure that if an enemy tries to come down on top of you, you can hit them with your knee and they will be knocked out for several hours. No permanent damage done, however, although they may have one hell of a broken jaw." He chuckled. "I want to show you another good technique. It is called the choke hold. It is very basic, but very effective." He grabbed onto Ham, holding him by the Adam's apple. "Now, if I squeeze tighter..." As Tanaka said this, Ham's face grew paler, and he looked more shocked by the second. Jake and Eli smirked beneath their veils. "I would bust his windpipe," said Tanaka, and let him go. Ham gasped for breath, coughing and spluttering on the floor. Tanaka demonstrated the finger work. "Just make this motion with your 3 fingers out and hold. This is the choke hold. Very simple, very effective." As he continued his martial arts training, the students were going to the punching bags, running backwards and forwards in endurance exercises, jumping up and down and doing star jumps, touching their toes. After a while, he got them to drag weights called kettlebells, tied on to the end of a length of rope across the floor. Plum was sweating from exhaustion, trying to catch his breath as he struggled to do everything that Tanaka had wanted. But it all became too much. These exercises on top of the martial arts training were too strenuous, and in his exhaustion he collapsed onto the cold, hard floor. The next sensation Plum felt was a cold bucket of water being thrown over him. Plum could see Jedediah's brown sandals as he regained consciousness. What happened?" Plum's words were barely escaping his breath. Jedediah said softly, I stopped the lesson. Tanaka was going too hard on you all. He turned around, and all of his ire came up with him, and he took it out on Tanaka. Look at these students! They're an absolute mess! Jedediah pointed to the students gasping for breath on the floor. They'd probably be dead from exhaustion or worse. Physical training is important, Tanaka, but not so important that you have to completely exhaust all of Prolius's students, he said, looking at the bunch of students on the floor with concern. Or actually kill them, as the case may be. You could have left it at basic stretches, but you had to overcomplicate things by giving them even more strenuous and complicated exercises. Tanaka retorted. That's the whole point of physical training. You are supposed to exhaust them until there is nothing left. That is how you make men out of these boys. Some of these men are just barely teenagers, and they have a lesson after this to get to. What do I tell their supervisors if none of them can attend because of exhaustion? Jedediah insisted. I suppose I will have to tell Professor Deacon that they are not going to make it to their lesson this afternoon. Jedediah then shouted, Class dismissed for today. You can return to your dormitories and rest. Food will be brought up to you. All of the students sighed with relief as they went back to their dormitories and into their beds. Plum was lying in bed in his dormitory thinking, and not for the first time, about his mother in Devane, wondering how she was doing. He quickly got out a pen and paper from the bedside drawer and started to draft a letter. Dear Mum, I hope everything is well with you. I hope you are handling everything at home fine without me. Things have been good at the school. I have learnt spells and charms, and I had my first physical training session today, which really tired me out. So these lessons were postponed until next week. That's when our second physical training session shall begin. I've made a few very good friends, Eli, Jake, and Job. They're all very nice guys and have stuck to me like glue. I also have a tutor. His name is Jedediah, and he is also a very nice man. He says Prolius sees potential in me. That's why he tutors me. But it's only a secret between me, my friends, and you. No one else knows. And I think that's how Prolius wants to keep it. The journey here was long, but I finally got here in the end. How's everyone doing in the village? I hope they are all well. With love, Plum. Then Plum folded the letter and sealed it with the school's seal that he kept inside his bedside drawer with a few other items of stationery. He then got out his wand and cast the translocation spell. When the letter had disappeared, he went to sleep. The next day, the 4 boys were standing in the lecture hall, and Professor Deacon was sitting behind his desk waiting for all of the students to come in. As each of them arrived, he ticked their names off the list, and the students took their seats. When they were all present, Deacon began. Now, focusing on the weather control is a classic spell used by many wizards, often too much to their own advantage. He gave a smile, his crinkly old face showing its many years in his age lines. There was one wizard in history. Whenever he saw that there was going to be a rainy day, he would just cast the spell and stop the rain from happening. Now that is what I call a fussy wizard. Slight disappointment showed on his face when there was no reaction to his joke from the pupils. Coughing into his sleeve, he continued, It's a very simple spell, and it goes like so. He wrote the incantation on the board, and the students copied down the spell, repeating it several times in their head so that they could commit it to memory. Now we are going to learn another good spell. It will allow you to talk to any animal. Deacon said the spell out loud this time. Anamos Hanasas. He then wrote it on the board. Now, this spell is one of my personal favorites. It's called the shape-shifting spell. It will allow you to shape-shift into any animal. It reminds me of the time. All of the students groaned as he started another anecdote. Deacon continued irrespective of the students' moaning. It reminds me of the time when one of my friends used the spell so many times he got stuck as an ant. Seeing the students were unamused, he recommenced the lecture. Anyhow, be careful with that one. Too many good wizards have been snared by the delights of becoming an animal. If you stay for too long in another form, you won't recall that you were ever a human. Now, let's get on to the matter of scrying. This allows you to see what your friends or enemies are doing through a medium such as water or some other mirroring surface. Oh, Plum liked the idea of being able to see what his mother was doing, or even Drake. It made him less lonely. After the lesson, he stood outside the hall. Plum started to hear murmurs, not like the murmurs of the chanting when casting a spell. This was harsher. Plum made out the words, Yeah, give it to him. He could see 2 fourth-year students having a wizard's duel with elementals. A huge crowd gathered, and Plum pushed his way through the crowd to see what was going on. What Plum saw amazed him. Elemental servants were duking it out. One was a fire elemental, and the other was a rock elemental. Behind them, 2 wizards were issuing commands to the creatures. The crowd seemed to be cheering on the stronger fighter. Go, Seth! Go, Seth! Seth, go! Seth said, Finish him off! And his large fire elemental charged the rock elemental and knocked it clean off his feet. From where Plum was sitting, the fire elemental clearly had the upper hand in this battle. It wrapped itself around the rock elemental and was crushing its rock-like exterior as the stone caught fire, scorching the rock elemental. By this time, the fire elemental had completely engulfed the rock elemental in its body of flame, and it seemed to be crying out in frustration in its alien language, which sounds like rocks crashing down a hillside. Then it screamed such an intense scream that Plum covered his ears. He could see that the rock elemental was trying to get out of the engulfing flames, but to no avail.